I'm Barbara McFarlane. I'm a member of the Existing Buildings group, introducing everybody. This is our first community retrofit event, and we're very grateful to Hassel for allowing us to use the space, and also to Jonathan Irwan, who's been very helpful in facilitating it. Just so for people who may not know, ACAN is a network of individuals who work in the built environment who wish to take action to address the twin crisis of climate and ecological breakdown. If you want to know more, you can check out our website and drop us an email. Also, on the next slide, there is a QR code, but you can't quite see it. There will be, you can see more of it at the end. So you can screenshot it, and that will give you access to the Existing Buildings WhatsApp group. Do introduce yourself on the chat, and please add any questions into the chat, and Susie and her team will collate them for the Q&A, which we're going to do at the end of the event. We have a very interesting evening planned. People are increasingly talking about retrofit. Retrospectively fitting energy-saving improvements to a home is a way that the UK can meet its climate targets and fix our incredibly cold, damp and unhealthy homes. There is no one size that fits all. The built environment is responsible for nearly 40% of CO2 emissions per year and is a major contributor to climate change. So, as well as reducing operational carbon and making homes more energy efficient, we also want to aim to retrofit homes using materials which have lower embodied energy. Our three speakers have set up pioneering community-led approaches to improving energy efficiency in the UK's housing stock. And we're looking forward to hearing how they establish the projects that make the domestic retrofit easy to understand and access. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Jonathan Atkinson. Jonathan, based in Manchester, is a founder of a community energy organisation, Carbon Co-op, where he acts as Retrofit Lead. In 2021, he was one of the co-founders of the Retrofit one-stop shop, People Powered Retrofit, running the R&D project that led to its foundation, whilst at Carbon Co-op authoring the business plan and investment offer. He now acts as a business director, overseeing income generation, and acts as a mentor and advisor to other retrofit one-stop shop initiatives around the UK and in Europe. So over to you, Jonathan.
Brilliant. Thank you, Barbara. And yeah, thanks to ACAN for inviting us along this evening. Sorry, can't be there in person. It would be great to meet everyone in the room and generally network, but yeah, unfortunately just dialing in today. So yes, can I speak again? Oh God.
You might need to go in another room.
Maybe you need to kill your mic in the room while I'm talking.
Oh yes, that's a good idea. See,
I think it's fine now.
I think it is fine now, actually.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. So yeah, what I'm going to do is as Barbara kind of introduced, I'm slightly confusingly like got a senior role in two community energy or citizen-led cooperatives, both that have a slightly different role within retrofit, delivering retrofit. The first one, Carbon Co-op Predicts, the second one, People Powered Retrofit. So I'll give you a little bit of a potted history of our setup for Carbon Co-op before moving on to People Powered Retrofit. So this is just summarising that. I'll talk about our track record. With Carbon Co-op, I'll talk about our area-based approach to retrofit. and a little bit about advocacy for human-centered approaches. Then I'll talk about people-powered retrofit, the one-stop shop approach, and like how it's growing more, and then future plans and policy drivers. So Carbon Co-op came out of Manchester in the 2000s, and it was a response really to people wanting to take action on climate change in the homes and communities, but not really knowing what to do and feeling isolated, and not really knowing what technical things to look for or what contractors to look for. We actually, firstly, our focus is around solar panels. We're the Hume Solar Co-op. But with the feed-in tariff and the takeoff of that, we moved our focus to retrofit, because retrofit seemed to be an area where there were quite a lot of barriers to people getting involved. So we established ourselves as a cooperative in 2011, and we've been going since then. Really, we saw a lot of growth in the last 5 years or so, and like we're now a staff team of 20. We do a whole range of projects, not just retrofit, but also energy systems, planning as well, energy planning and advocacy, and all sorts of things. We now have 400 members, mostly in Greater Manchester, but also from further afield as well. But I'm going to talk about our retrofit work mostly. We do loads of different things, and over the years, as you can imagine, coming out of a kind of community energy background, a lot of the work we initially did was things like raising awareness, putting on evenings. We did a lot of work around bringing people together in homes and communities, running training. We did a lot of that and that sort of thing. We also, in 2012, we got some money from the government, Department of Energy and Climate Change at the time, to develop, well, I think the thing we were finding at the time was people didn't really know what to do first in terms of a retrofit on their home, what measures would have the most bang for their buck, if they had a certain amount of money, where should they put it? And so, obviously, as is like relatively common now, but at the time was relatively uncommon, we decided to create an assessment methodology based on full SAP, and we created an assessment tool to do that and started selling assessments to householders, or at least on a funded basis to begin with. And then, because after the funding ran out, we had so much demand, we started to deliver assessments ourselves. And these are kind of quite in-depth 2 to 3 hour assessments that develop a retrofit plan for people. And the tool is now called Home Retrofit Planner. And not only do we use it in Manchester, but people all around the UK, other organisations all around the UK use it as well. So that was our kind of first foray into not just awareness raising and kind of, like training people, but starting to get into developing services. And our first big project was Community Green Deal. Now, this was 2013, 2014, 2015. We retrofitted 12 homes, deep retrofit, average works cost around £40,000. It was part of a government programme. So essentially, we had a little bit of startup funding to run the scheme. And then we were gifted money to lend to householders at 0% interest. And they funded the works, as well as contributing some of their own kind of funds to the works as well. And we were the intermediary Carbon Co-op. So we procured a design team from Urbed, practice in Manchester. We procured the contractors. We worked with an organisation like Lendology to lend out the money. We ran the scheme, and it was incredibly challenging. We had no permanent staff at the time, so it was done on a freelance basis. It was a super interesting project. But as you can imagine, like to do 12 homes all across Greater Manchester was quite a logistical kind of challenge. But the impact was fantastic. And there was a lot of monitoring and evaluation on this. We saved space heating demand by about 50%, carbon emissions by 60%. We used external wall insulation and all sorts of measures, took a whole house approach. And we just learned loads from it, basically. And it really inspired us to think not just about trying to encourage other people to do retrofit, but doing it ourselves and building the skills and capabilities in-house. So, funnily enough, that scheme has a role to play in our current scheme, which is the development of an area-based approach to retrofit. And the link there is that the loan money that we lent out to householders is being paid back over time, and we've accumulated about £200,000 of that money back again. And when we were gifted this money by the government, they said you can give it out. You can't re-lend it. You have to give it as grants to people in fuel poverty, and they give no more direction than that. And we spent a few years thinking, well, how do we best give out that money? And do we just give it to a local authority, or do we throw it into another scheme or what have you? But actually, our board were really keen that we learned the lessons of the deep retrofit project that we'd done, and maybe extended the benefits of like a whole house retrofit to like a more diverse audience that wasn't able to pay. And we were also inspired by some of the area-based approaches that we'd seen previously. I mean, under the last Labour government, there was SERT and CESP, which are area-based approaches, or one of them I can never remember which one. I think is an area-based approach to energy efficiency improvements. At the time, it was mainly kind of lofts and re-roofing and stuff, so limited, but an interesting approach where they would tackle multiple tenures. And then also, like, going back even further, I believe, I'm not that old, but I believe local authorities, it was common to do home improvement on an area-based approach, and kind of to use direct works and this sort of thing. So our thinking here was to use an area-based approach to deliver deep retrofit in a kind of small area, like a couple of streets in Levenshulme in South Manchester. And as you can see in the middle of this diagram, Carbon Coop's playing the role of an intermediary. So we've developed the scheme, we've done mapping, we've brought together a finance package, we've procured it, we've put a business case together, we've engaged local people and signed up people. And we're then contracting multiple householders, or they're contracting us to do the work for them. And then on the other side, we're contracting a contractor, a social enterprise contractor, B for Box, to do the work. We're bringing in the finance, the grants that we've accumulated from that previous loan program, and then additionally lending from the local authority, again from previous regen schemes, charge on the house, 0% interest, only discharged when the house changes hands. So a really interesting kind of package of all kinds of things here, like taking an area-based approach to engagement, design, and building a scheme, really. We literally are signing the contract with a contractor tomorrow, and then we'll be into mobilisation and work's going on. The program's meant to be July into December. There's only like half a dozen houses, so it's not like huge scale, but this is about like demonstrating what's possible and obviously taking a deep retrofit approach. Just to whiz through kind of that approach that we've taken, the initial thing, we used GIS mapping to identify the area, looked at different building data as well as demographics to focus on an area where there was mixed demographics, but also like relatively homogeneous building type. This gives you a bit of these are pictures from the streets, so you get a bit of an idea. Most of the work's going to be external wall insulation with windows and like draft proofing. We don't have heat pumps on this phase of the scheme, but we're hoping to go back, and essentially we've made the homes heat pump ready for further kind of phases. We also did, as well as engaging people at a local level, we did a character mapping and developed like typologies and archetypes, so that we're not doing a bespoke retrofit for every single house. We're offering a kind of set of package measures and then adapting them for the specific context of each property. But it's like what we're hoping to do is like offer routes where you can do more like homogenous kind of houses, create more generic offers without having to design every single house. And yeah, a lot of the engagement activity has been really interesting because we haven't engaged individual householders one-to-one, but we've done it collectively in groups, and not only houses involved in the scheme, but other houses around as well. We visited other retrofit properties. We've done a really interesting participatory design process with our architect on the right-hand side there. So I think it's a really fascinating project. In terms of like looking at new government and what have you, they have talked about area-based approaches as a way to extend retrofit. The environment is pretty bare in terms of area-based approaches outside of things like SHDF at the moment, but there's a lot of interest. So yeah, we're really hopeful that just half a dozen houses now will lead on to more stuff in the future, and other people will pick it up. Bit tight for time, so I'll move on to people powered retrofit. So having done those bigger retrofit schemes, and then in the process of developing the area-based schemes and approaches, we were successful in securing some government money which was around creating new retrofit markets around the UK. And Cozy Homes Oxford, Geordie, you'll hear from him in a sec. They were another one of those pilots. There were 6 in all. There was a few around the UK, one in Bristol and London as well. So that ran from 2018 to 2021, and what that research and development was around was like, how could we build on the work we're already doing to create a more holistic end-to-end process for people who wanted to retrofit their homes but didn't know where to start, and also wanted someone to take the hassle away from it and didn't want to be I think the people in Carbon Corp are more those pioneers, those early adopters, ECB types, people involved in ACAN as well, who are happy to do all the research for themselves. But people powered retrofit, we're starting to think beyond that and look at a bigger, the broader market. We did a lot of research. We did a lot of service design work as well. And we looked at what the barriers were that people were facing in terms of retrofit. So overwhelmed by complexity and technical detail, find it really hard to make decisions. Even with a nice assessment, you've got to take that information and like apply it to your house, what you're going to do. Concerned about the risks and what could go wrong. Confused by conflicting advice from retrofit practitioners. There's a lot of very, very certain people in this sector who can tell you exactly what you should do, and that often puts people off. Problems finding contractors, which I'm sure people are aware of, and problems ensuring high quality works or having the assurance that the works will be of a good quality. So we developed a kind of offer, a service. People Powered Retrofit was the name, and now it's a new organization, an independent organization, but it's an end-to-end service, and it offers people assistance at every stage of the journey. So retrofit advisor, and we have an advisor on the team offering basic help and signposting. That assessment and retrofit plan, and so we employ retrofit assessors, and we have our own like retrofit tool, Home Retrofit Planner, a detailed design advice stage, and we have 3 architects on the 4 now on the team who are providing technical specifications. We have standardized details, but we also do like project architects type work, specialist technical advisors like structural engineer and other people to do investigations. We then procure contractors. We don't contract directly, People Powered Retrofit, but we do what many architects do: sit alongside the householder, help them procure. We have a network of local contractors that we help them assess what the returns come. We do on-site QA framework, having a QA framework, and that's built into our technical specifications. And we're a single point of contact for that work all the way along, and can provide that kind of advice. And coming back from the Carbon Corp side of things, it has been quite a journey, I think, into the new service. But we've now worked with more than 200 clients at all different stages of retrofit. I think one of the things to reflect on is that we've started to diversify the design services that we offer, because not all householders want a full project architect on the project. They might want us to offer some work, some modelling, and to work with another architect who's outside of PPR, or maybe to work with a contractor, but to use standardised specifications and details and that sort of thing. So yeah, we take quite a diverse, different approach to the design stage. We've also got retrofit. A number of our designers are qualified as retrofit coordinators as well, so we can do that side of things. That's a bit about the setup. And yeah, it's really thriving at the moment. As well as the service, we also offer training for contractors. And as kind of Barbara highlighted in the introduction, we offer a lot of training and support, mentoring for other retrofit providers and one-stop shops who have got a similar kind of cooperative ethos to us around the UK. And we're working with people from Edinburgh down to Exeter, and even now into kind of bits of the EU, where one-stop shops and retrofit, where there's quite a thriving kind of policy environment for that sort of thing. I said I very briefly mentioned, but we're on a Green Homes Finance Accelerator project that we're running, People Powered Retrofit are running, which is to work with credit unions to offer local finance. It's not particularly low cost credit union finance, but what it is local, and there is often a link between savings and borrowing and the same values of like the members and the people that run credit unions as we have, which is around tackling climate change and local economic links and that sort of thing. So we've been to Ireland and the United States to look at what credit unions are doing there, which is pretty amazing stuff. And we're now developing a green home improvement loan that credit unions can deliver, where they're signposting and offering appropriate levels of advice to householders to help them progress their retrofit works. We're testing it, piloting it in Greater Manchester, but will in time be available across the UK. So that gives you a bit of a flavour of what we're doing and where we're going. And I think I'm just about at time, so I'll say thanks very much and hand over to maybe Geordie next.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. That was great. Yeah, I'll introduce Geordie now. Geordie Stewart is a skilled construction and project manager with over 25 years of international experience. Geordie is a passionate but sustainable and energy efficient solutions in the built environment. He is trained as a retrofit coordinator and manages the Cozy Homes Oxfordshire team based in Charlbury. Thank you, Geordie.
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you very much, Jonathan. Just want to check you can see my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yeah,
I see it. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you. So Jonathan, I mean, that's a great segue into what we're doing here in Oxfordshire. Cozy Homes Oxfordshire was one of the base pilots that were set up in Manchester, Oxford, London, Bristol, and the South Coast. So I joined Retrofit Works and Cozy Homes in 2019 when the scheme was about 2 months old, and was tasked with sort of designing, building and flying the scheme. It has not been without its challenges, and so I really just wanted to share my experiences over the last 5 years of how we've gone about that. There are a lot of similarities with People Powered, and also some differences. So the base funding was really sort of a seed funding. The purpose was to test the market for the able to pay scheme, so called, and the money available was just for 2 years, which to be honest wasn't quite long enough, but and there wasn't money directly for householders. However, we did subsidize our whole house plans during that period. Cozy Homes Oxfordshire is actually a brand. It's a partnership between Retrofit Works and the Low Carbon Hub. Retrofit Works is a non-for-profit cooperative, and I'll tell you more about the Low Carbon Hub as we go on. So Retrofit Works actually just celebrated its 10th anniversary recently, and Cozy Homes its 5th anniversary. So I've chosen to use the medium of cake to tell the story as in a celebration. Going back to 2019, past 2035 had recently been created, and has had the role of the Retrofit Coordinator. So tasked with building the scheme in conjunction with our MD Russell Smith, there was three slices needed to my cake, and that was coordinators, contractors, and clients. And I'll come on to some of the subsections there as we go along. So we set out to build the team, and I was lucky to be on one of the sort of first boot camps from the Retrofit Academy, doing my level 5 in 2019, and there I met Natasha. Natasha subsequently became our first Retrofit Coordinator, and I'm pleased to say is still with us today. She's now our most senior coordinator and works on sort of specialised projects, and she's also mentors our new coordinators as they join the team. Arantxa joined us shortly afterwards, originally as an admin assistant. As the years went on, more and more qualifications were sort of rolled out, and so she trained up as Retrofit advisor. So she's basically the first point of contact with clients when they get in touch, and she explains the retrofit journey to them, and manages basically holds the client's hands throughout the journey. Ian joined us shortly afterwards. He had been a domestic energy assessor. He subsequently trained as a retrofit coordinator and retrofit assessor. And he's also a specialist in fire, everything to do with fire as well, which is very useful. We recently, we've got Kiwi and Ben here, but we've recently taken on not an ex-architect, but an architect that's left his practice and joined us, passive house architect. So we're now able to offer, when I say retrofit design, more sort of detailing as opposed to complete design. So it's important to know all these qualifications that have come about in sort of collaboration with the Retrofit Academy. The people I've just mentioned all came from a construction background, but we've also taken on people who are not from a construction background. And the qualifications are mostly online, and although there are some pre-requirements sort of thing, it's really important that it's not just seen as the be-all and end-all. So we invest a lot of time and energy in providing sort of on-site mentoring and opportunities and continual professional development. And I've been in construction for about 25 years, and I'm still, even last week when we ripped somebody's flat roof apart, found things I hadn't seen before. And so, every day is a learning day, and it's all about sharing that knowledge. So together we established the blueprint for our client journey. So we are a sort of a one-stop shop, and we over the years the Plan Builder app, which is powered by Priority Projects, which is the sort of the data crunching behind our whole house plans. So now every postcode in the country is in the Plan Builder app. So we just cover Oxfordshire. So if you live in Oxfordshire and type in your postcode, your address will pop up, your house will pop up, and it's We haven't been to that property most likely, so it's only as good as the data that's publicly available. So if there's been an EPC, if you're in a mid-terrace and your neighbours had an EPC, that data is extrapolated across the terrace. We know it's low confidence, but it'll be in the right ballpark, and you can actually edit that data and say, actually, no, I haven't got 3 bedrooms, I've got 4, or no, I haven't got single glazing, I've got double, and you can edit the sort of your own home, and then you can start introducing potential retrofit measures. So you can actually see completely for free, you can see what the impact would be on your energy bills and your carbon and your EPC. That's a great tool. But if householders want to take it further, they submit that and that comes through to Arantxa. She will book in a triage call and all being well, book in a whole home assessment where the retrofit assessor will go, typically spend a couple of hours in the property, measuring everything possible there is to measure, doing condition surveys, ventilation assessments, checking for mold, damp, any structural problems. All that data gets sent back to our office. A retrofit coordinator is then appointed that project, and they use that data to develop the whole house plan. I'll explain a bit more about the whole house plan in a sec. If the client then wants to go ahead, so that's kind of part one of our sort of service, I'd say. The middle bit is if people want to go to the next stage, the retrofit coordinator will go back to the property and discuss all the measures that have been recommended, and go into more depth about what that would actually entail. We'll be looking at the disruption, the cost, more sort of in-depth technical, and we'd be put together the sort of technical schedule for each measure that's been agreed, and that's that schedule that then gets sent to our pool of trusted contractors. So part of the BASE project was, or funding was not only to test the market for the supply chain, for the able to pay market, it was also to develop the supply chain. So that's encouraging contractors to get involved in retrofit. Now in Oxford, that's been an uphill battle, because Oxford has a combination of very affluent people and very poor people, but people in the building industry are generally booked up for, often for 1 or 2 years ahead, because there's just so much work going on. People are building extensions and digging cellars and adding bits on their roof and things like that. So trying to get contractors interested when they've already got work has been tough, and it's been one of my main projects over the years. So those quotes go out. Just to add, we actually do a lot of vetting for contractors, and it's on a par. It mirrors the Trustmark vetting, and we in a similar way to People Powered, we're not acting as a principal contractor. We work with trusted local contractors, but the contract is between the householder and the contractor, but we provide the coordination service and the oversight throughout the journey. So all being well, contracts agreed, works proceed, and the whole client journey is overseen and quality assured by a qualified retrofit coordinator. Very briefly on the whole house plan. So we've developed this over the years. As I mentioned, it's the data behind it is powered by Powered Projects, and it's a comprehensive document. We look at the current performance, how the house is performing today in terms of EPC, fuel bills, carbon, and also heating, the kilowatts hours per square meter for the heating demand, and then we sort of throw everything at it in the first version. So we look at all the things that are possible to get towards net zero. And there has been a lot of discussion recently about, should we work to a certain standard, you know, to LETI or ACB, or there's various standards now, and it's in the able to pay, it really boils down to finance and what people can afford. So we always effectively do the best we possibly think, you know, to the best possible practice, you know, way beyond building regs, but people aren't always doing the whole house, so they may just do a few rooms at a time. So it's hard to work to a whole house standard when you're doing it in a phased approach. And that is the beauty of the whole house plan. It is set out as a midterm plan, but it can be broken down into phases, you know, according to people's budgets and appetite for disruption. So having built the team and worked on the whole house plan, we really needed to attract some clients. And we had a bit of a conundrum, because clients weren't confident that we could deliver without having contractors in place, and contractors were skeptical until we could demonstrate a steady stream of clients. And this is where the sort of a key ingredient came in, which was basically the jam that held all our slices of cake together, which are the community advocates. So community advocates, so advocates really can be any sort of group, can be low carbon groups, there can be transition streets, town, district, county councils, religious groups, architectural practices, there's all sorts of advocates. In our case, we've been very, very fortunate having the Low Carbon Hub as our partner. So they're an umbrella organisation that represent over 40 low carbon groups across Oxfordshire. So that's an incredible outreach. It's bringing trust because it's a trusted brand. It's bringing engagement opportunities, and it's allowed us to develop great relationships across wider organisations and councils. They provided basically the soft side of things, the branding, the always going out into the community, town halls, fetes, fairs, libraries, and being out there sort of doing the community outreach and engaging with the local community. This partnership has allowed all sorts of innovation. So, for example, a local town council commissioned us to look at their entire community of 1,500 houses, and we developed whole house plan typologies as an engagement tool to work with the community. Now, initially, we've always been very strong on the fact that every house is different and every house needs an individual whole house plan, and it's been, you know, proven even on a street where every house is built at the same time and it has the same form. You would think it would perform in the same way, but over the years, people have done different things and added extensions and changed the windows, and it might be somebody working from home or be out all day, and so their energy use and is very different. Now, this is absolutely true, but it still is predominantly the same form. So I think similar to what Jonathan had been doing on the street by street approach, developing these typologies, that means that people can identify with a certain type of house, because a pre-1900s house is very different from a 1970s cavity built house. So the sort of measures we'll be recommending will be along a similar lines. But it is important to follow that up with an individual survey. We now have the city, district, and county councils as advocates, and we've actually recently been commissioned by Oxford City Council to develop 12 typologies across the city, specifically to engage with landlords. We have an incredible amount of landlord properties in Oxford because of all the universities. but they've been proven to be very hard to reach out. You know, the incentives aren't there. The MEES standard, the minimum energy efficiency standard, was dropped by the government, although Oxford are sort of still basically pretending it still exists and still using that as a stick, but they also want to have the carrots as well. So we've now got that great relationship and with the councils and are working very closely on a number of projects with them. Other advocates include local colleges. Abingdon and Whitney have recently set up the Net Zeros Hub and have been running all sorts of courses, one specifically on becoming advocates, but also more practical, you know, air tightness, ventilation courses. The picture below is one we actually organised ourselves, and this was a SEGA air tightness hands-on practical session, and you can't beat this sort of session. So this was attended. In the picture there, you've got retrofit coordinators, you've got architects, and you've got contractors. So basically everybody's singing from the same hymn sheet, everybody's on the same page. Air tightness tapes is one of those things you really need to do practically to understand how it all fits together. But it's also understanding why it's important. You know, contractors need to, it's not just about how to do things, it's understanding why it's important as well, which is a great part of it. So incrementally, we built that trust with clients, so which allowed us to proceed and carry out retrofits of all sizes. The type of work we do, I mean, it can literally be a loft insulation, or it can be you know, a £400,000 very deep retrofit, and everything in between. That's an outlier, but it's everything in between. So you know, this is a good example of a successful retrofit carried out last year, and it's typical of the sort of thing that we're doing now on a daily basis. So, you know, windows, external wall insulation, internal wall insulation, room and roof, flat roof, heat pump PV. In this case, the EPC went from a 67D to an 85B. Some people are interested in EPCs, mainly landlords. Other clients are interested in, I mean, we've had one chap who's 95 years old, and he basically said, I'm going to be dead soon, but I'm doing it for the next generation, whoever buys the house next, sort of thing. So we have all sorts of people. There's a lot of people in Oxford that are doing this for environmental reasons, to addressing the climate crisis. But it might be just because somebody's living in a cold, damp house and they just want to improve their thermal comfort. So we've managed to develop the skills, the knowledge, and the blueprint to help houses reduce their carbon, improve their comfort, hopefully reduce their energy costs. And for me, the cherry on the cake is when our actual clients become advocates themselves. So there's multiple opportunities for SMEs setting up a similar scheme, for colleges to support them with hands-on training, for councils to act as advocates and provide funding, and for contractors to be part of the retrofit revolution. Have to end on our architects that we work with. We work closely with 4 practices: Transition by Design, South Space, Jessup and Cook, and Charlie Luxton. And we've actually become advocates for each other. We tend to, we've recently had a lot of referrals from them when they see that it's more suitable for the type of work we do. And equally, if somebody's looking for, you know, we're not trying to deliver new build or big extensions or anything like that. So if it's such a client comes, you know, they may want to do retrofit their main house, but also build an extension, and that's where we collaborate with local architects. And I'm fairly sure either most of those individuals or people working in those organisations are ACAN members. So that's me. I have no idea if I've gone over time or under time, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Geordie. You're 2 minutes over, so that's pretty good.
Okay.
And I now have pleasure in introducing Zana, who's in the room with us. Zana Dean works at London, sort of South East London Community Energy, which is also known as SELCE. And she works alongside the founder, Giovanna Speciale. She acts as the project lead for a scheme which is called Future Fit Homes, a domestic retrofit advice service for homeowners who are either eligible for grant funding or are self-funding retrofit. Zana has a background as an architect at Tread Studio and also at Anthorn Architects, and specialises in low energy, natural materials and community architecture. She also has Retrofit Coordinator training.
Thank you, and nice to see everyone here and the audience, and thank you to Jonathan and Georgie. That's absolutely brilliant. And it's like we're a family, hopefully, all these different projects around the country, and you know, we've all been following each other and learning from each other, hopefully. But I've come from architecture. I'm just going to mention that because this is ACAN, and I just want to sort of set the scene of like, how am I ending up in a community energy company? And it feels like I've ended up at my natural home where I needed to be. I've been talking to Barbara about this and Susie over the years, and told them about like, we need to do more retrofit. We can't be building more buildings in the climate crisis point that we're at. So, you know, obviously some buildings might need to be built, but until we've retrofitted all the buildings that need to be retrofitted, we're really sort of not cutting carbon until we're really getting the emissions under control from construction and energy in use. So although I've worked in low energy design for many years and the not-for-profit sector, it's really nice to actually be in a community organisation. So the project I'm involved in is called Future Fit Homes. And SELCE, which is South East London Community Energy, we are partnering on this project with Repowering London. So they're another community energy co-op in South London. So it's the first time we've worked together on one project, which is really, really great. And so I'm going to look at the beginnings of SELCE. I was asked to say, like, how did the project emerge? You know, what were the background? Then how did we get into retrofit? And then the current project, the Future Fit Homes project. So that'll be the three things I'll try and cover. But do ask questions as well. So SELCE timeline. So Giovanna Speciale went to COP15 in Copenhagen and discovered that the aim was to limit to 2 degrees, and she came back in despair, and she decided to train in do a master's in energy, and she's actually coming from a research background. About 3 years were spent setting up SELCE, and that involved putting up a sign that people read on a bus stop saying, come to a meeting. We're going to set up a community energy co-op. And they were in Greenwich in South London, and there was some support to set up co-ops. And SELCE is now 10 years old, so we're celebrating our 10th anniversary, but it took a few years to get it all set up. And this diagram is just showing that it started with solar, and very, very quickly the mission was not just to decarbonise by installing solar panels on community buildings such as schools, but to help the community in a just energy transition. So that immediately went into doing energy advice for people in fuel poverty. So there's been 2 main strands running all the way through, which was community share offer, so you can invest, and I'm wearing a badge saying you can invest at the moment. You want to put some money into community shares. That's a way of supporting solar on schools or LED lighting in schools. The energy advice carries on all the way through the 10 years. And then the last 3 steps is Future Fit Homes, pilot project, Future Fit Streets, and the LEAD project, which is it's called LEAD, Local Energy Advice Demonstrator. That's a government funding acronym, and our version is Future Fit Homes. So that's the kind of that's the path it's gone through. So this is a bit about SELCE. So energy advice is at the core. And we run like pop-up advice cafes. People can drop in, people can come into the office, and we cover 4 boroughs, Bromley, Bexley, Lewisham and Greenwich. And SELCE has now got a really good kind of reputation of being trusted to help people with fuel poverty and vouchers, getting the best deals for their electricity, and also having small measures installed. So that could be draft stripping, LED light bulbs, getting controls on heating or even replacing boilers, small measures that can help people very directly, but it even goes to heated gilet that people can wear if they're in the cold, if they can't afford the energy bills. So it's really on the ground, in-person advice where we go to people's homes as well. And we support businesses to make a green transition, and we install a LED as well as solar. So schools actually often can't afford to replace their light bulbs, so they might have thousands of light bulbs. So the share offer we've got at the moment is actually you can invest some money and a school can replace all their light fittings with LEDs and cut their CO2 emissions and their bills. So quite a few different things that we're doing. And we've got something called the solar roller, which is solar powered power going out to festivals. So how did we start in the retrofit sector? So we started slightly different to the last 2 co-ops, because we started with retrofit advocacy. So we would be the link helping clients to get eco funding. So we would do the outreach work and the advocacy work and form the links to pass on the leads to the different schemes that would be running. So for example, LAD 1, Eco 1, Eco 2, LAD 2, these were all different versions, but Eco 3, Eco Flex, so all of these are for people who are eligible to have the grant funded energy efficiency installations. So it could be external wall insulation, internal wall insulation, it could be loft insulation with a new boiler and heating controls, possibly double glazing. I mean, at the moment that's very unlikely, but different levels of measures for people who are eligible. And the normal criteria would be, for example, if you might be a homeowner, so we're largely working with homeowners, but you would be possibly on various types of benefits, possibly with a low EPC, possibly with various health conditions, or a combination of those. So the eligibility changes, but it's trying to reach the people who are least able to afford the work themselves, and it's completely separate to the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. This is going to individual homeowners and through the private rented sector. And that's the last bit at the bottom where we helped through the private rented sector. We then in 2019 had our first Future Fit Home service, which is more like a retrofit advice service, where we carried out whole house plans. We were subcontracted by EcoFurb, and we carried out thermal imaging surveys using an app called Cheese, which I don't think exists now, but that gave a very direct visual for people, and we might reintroduce that. We did a knowledge sharing with Carbon Co-op and Besco, who were doing similar approaches, but we were all coming from different directions, so we had a lot of knowledge to share there. And I think about 50 homes went through this particular scheme, but one was to look at a particular street, and try and get neighbours on one street, which was Gordon Brook Road, to actually work together. So a lot of this is about, people have mentioned advocates, a lot of it is about communicating. So it's about telling the story, it's about neighbours talking to each other, it's about how do you encourage even the conversation about retrofit when it's something that a lot of people aren't thinking about, and how to drop that into the thinking of home improvement. So if you're thinking about how are you going to improve your home, are you just going to spend it on a new kitchen, or are you actually going to invest something in retrofit? So the more that can be a current conversation, we feel as though more people will then incorporate that into their normal plans for their home improvements. So barriers were outreach, funding, which has been talked about quite a bit, supply chain, and a retrofit assessment and coordination. So we're going to be going back to this street 2 years later to do some research to find out, did anyone go ahead? Because one of the problems is researching what happens with these projects is it's a very slow time lag, which obviously we know in architecture, but it goes for even small measures. People differ, don't decide to go ahead. You might give them the tools to go ahead, but they may not make the decision, and they might be waiting for builders, waiting for funding. So we're going to go back and revisit and try and track whether people are going ahead with installs. So the current project is we've got funding for what was 2 years. It's actually an 18-month project. We're halfway through, so I've been there for after that 9 months. And we're working, as I said, with Repowering London. Our other partners are Community Energy London and the boroughs of Lambeth, Lewisham, Greenwich and Newham. And Lewisham also, they administer EcoFlex, which is another type of route into getting funding for people who are eligible. And the idea of working with the local authorities is that we're supporting their decarbonisation plans in the able to pay and the grant funding eligible homeowner sector. So obviously local authorities have got their own social housing funds that they're pursuing on their own housing, but they're also in their climate action plans trying to look at the whole borough. So it's not necessarily properties they own, but they're trying to help the whole borough move forward, and then looking at which methods work, which type of communication works, how can we progress this? So we've got a 2-year project. Out of that, the first part was just getting everything approved and set up. The first year of funding was 6 months. The second year of funding is 12 months. Recruitment took up a lot of time because this is actually a new project starting from a standstill. So I was new, then we had to write job descriptions, then we had to put the job ads out, then we had to get people in. So all the while we're still mobilising the project, and delivering project is building up. So we're entering now into the period where hopefully the delivery is more in full swing. And amongst that, we're having the different partner meetings and the feedback and the learning from what's happening. So always reviewing and changing and trying to improve on the service. It's not just a linear, we're in the loops as well of feedback. And so the main journey is sort of slightly convoluted, but we've got already about 2,000 people who've been getting energy advice from us, who we know already they've been clients of our co-op. So we're sifting through. We've got various methods of sort of checking who might be eligible. We've had fuel poverty advice. We're also getting new leads from the local authorities and from all our outreach work, and from sign-ups on our webpage. So obviously we're doing publicity and social media, different ones, and they come into the new lead, which is in the Retrofit CRM, which is our customer management. Then we will do an assessment normally when we're using different software for the assessments, all the while reporting back on our research. And from the assessment, people will either go to EcoFlex or Eco Measures, where the contractor is actually being paid by the energy companies. So it's the energy company obligation. So we won't administer the contract, but we will pass on the leads. Or they'll go through a whole house plan and be able to pay retrofit measures. But we have our own retrofit assessors and retrofit coordinators. So all of the team sadly, I haven't got photographs of them all popping up, which was lovely, but we've got SELCE staff, repowering staff. So just to summarise, we've got community outreach officers, retrofit coordinators and assessors, project management team and research. So these are all the people who are in the team, and some of them overlap with other work in the organisation. But that's how the team is built up in-house. And then we've also got people we're collaborating with, University of Sussex, who are doing a research project on place-based retrofit. So they'll be looking at 4 projects across the country, of which we will be one of those. Lewisham Council, as I mentioned, Community Energy London and the authorities. So we've also got, not listed there, but we've got architects who we're working with. And we've got other consultants coming in, helping with various things like photography and design. So we've got a dashboard which shows how many cases are at each stage. So we've got stages 1 to 7. I come from an architecture background, so I wanted to align the PAS process with the 7 stages so that we all know where we are, whether we're talking to architects or contractors, or and it seems to work. You know, people said to me, "Oh, it doesn't quite align." No, it doesn't quite align, but it aligns well enough that you can go through and simplified it. So I think we've got about 200 odd people on our caseload at the moment. So we want to be able to see how are people progressing, what stages are they at. So at the moment, work on site 9, handover 1. So we've had 10 installs. That's a kind of a rough thing. It's not, this system isn't automated yet, but we want to get a system where this pops up in our CRM. And then feedback and evaluate. So some of those people, there's more than the installs, because some of those people won't have had measures installed, but we still want to find out what happened. Why did they drop out of the project? Should we call them back in a year's time? You know, at what stage are people leaving the process, and what are the reasons for that? And then we will have this lovely thing where each case pops up. Again, this is in development. So the different routes that you can go through, most people will start on the left, finding out about us, being triaged, having an assessment, and then there's different paths that they could go through. They could go through the eco route as mentioned. They could just have a whole house plan. 80% of people haven't then got the money to progress if they're homeowners and they can't get a grant. So we want to really look at that gap, which has been talked about a lot, about funding. Is it a loan? Is it a grant? Is it going to Ed Miliband hopefully next week and pleading for a huge new system? Who knows what will happen? But that's a big gap. But we've also got people who own lovely big houses with 11 bedrooms in Greenwich. They want to spend some money. So we're going to help them to find, with the whole house plan, what's their stage process, what do they want to do next, and what order do they want to do it, and save carbon. And then we'll also work with the planning and building regs, obviously, to make sure people are kind of complying. And then, yeah, have the different routes through.
Okay.
We've got looking at our caseload, how many cases come in. You know, we're always trying to keep an eye on where people are. How did they hear about us? So we know how our communication's working and the motivations. It doesn't cover everybody, and it's slightly makeshift because people have to just sign on a form. But making your home more comfortable is coming out at 32%, and then reducing carbon emissions, and reducing bills. So all of these are very, very important to people. And generally, people don't want to have to pick one because they're gonna go, oh, all of those. You know, they're really motivated by different things, but by a combination of things. So that's a really good thing to know, as to, you know, why are people coming forward? And so again, although we're doing borough-wide work in 4 boroughs, we're also doing neighbourhoods where we will try and set up these neighbourhood retrofit parties. It could be in someone's house, or it could be in a local community centre. So we've got a method using data that the local authorities sign up to something, a parity software called Platform, which can look at whole borough stock and assess whether it's age of property, EPC, construction. Then we could look at tenure. We could also look at household income, whether they're on council tax benefit. So we can look at and find areas where we think we want to target. So we've for this project chosen 2. One will be where we think the people might be affluent enough to pay for some work, and the other one is where we think and it might be a conservation area, and the other where we think people might be more eligible for the eco funding. So we can trial going to neighbourhoods and really try and get a lot of people together to talk about inspiring each other to go on this journey, because it's quite a commitment for people to take on, and we know a lot of barriers is just, it's hard work to go through retrofit. So we're going out chatting to people, and you know, it's really good to have those conversations. And we also have people coming up to us saying, oh, but I've retrofitted my house, we don't need your help. So we say, great, you can help us, you can be an advocate. Can we, you know, would you like to talk about what you've done? So, you know, it's both ways. It's a really good, we've got obviously our leaflets and trying different types of styles of leaflets, you know, what kind of things appeal to people. And logging how many people are attending. We had the speaker of Lewisham Council come to stall. That was on Sunday. So what next? So we're halfway through the project, but we've still got a lot to do. As I said, neighbourhood outreach. It's not going to just involve streets and localities, it will involve blocks of flats as well. So Repowering London specifically, they've been working on a toolkit for a flats retrofit. So they're doing a lot of work on flats, whereas we're doing more work on street level properties. So that's really nice, because we've got in 2 different ways we're looking at things. We'll continue the installs and review the eco funding route. So the energy company obligation is becoming less able to access. So it's a real issue for us at the moment. Referring to architects, as we talked about, the whole house plan, we're using the parity software, which was mentioned before, but they've just changed the software. So we're struggling to keep up with that and redesign it around their new one. And we want to also look at point of intervention. So as well as what's been mentioned about archetypes, is to have case studies based on these type of houses, but also types of what people are planning to do anyway, and how can we help them to then incorporate retrofit with their plans. So there's a couple of pictures there of households who said, oh, I'm just doing my kitchen, I don't need to do anything else. Oh, you're doing your kitchen, you can do the walls and the floor, and suddenly they've done that room, and then they'll have their new kitchen, but they've dry lined, insulated, internal wall insulation. They couldn't do external wall on that one, and underfloor insulation. So it's to try and like pop this into people's minds and continue with case studies and the research. So I think that's it. Finish on that. We've got other slides which I think will be going on too much.
Zana. That was fantastic. Thanks a lot. We're now going to move on to having a bit of a shift around whilst we go for the Q&A. So we might have a sort of bit of a pause, but I'm going to put up the slide which shows the QR code for the existing buildings group whilst we just do that, because I said I'd show it earlier. Yes. This one? That's it, yeah. Okay.
Shall I have
Yeah.
one question? There's
Hand
been
over
a
to
bit of
Susie.
discussion, and there's now around one question. Can you hear me?
You nod your head, Geordie, if you can hear us. Can you hear Susie?
Okay, but there's not been there's really been a discussion about one question that's been going on in the chat online, which is what is the best way for community retrofit groups to collaborate with councils and mayoralities? How can local government help? So I guess there's been a bit of some answers already in the chat, but should we maybe ask Jonathan, who's got the longest experience, to start on that one?
Yeah, I think, yeah, we've had discussion in the chat around local authorities. I think the unfortunate context is local authorities have had 14 years of like chronic defunding and austerity. So whereas at the beginning of that time, there was competent local authority staff experienced in contracting energy saving trust advice centres housed within local authorities, and just organisational memory, the things like the lending, you know, that I talked about. Now that's all gone, you know, no direct works, no architects would ever be employed by a local authority. I've barely ever seen it. You know, so it's a real tough context for that. Quite often we're trying to raise the ambition of the local authority, not the other way around. You know, we're trying to offer them opportunities. They still have organizational heft, they still have local legitimacy, they still have buildings, you know, and things like that. I think unfortunately sometimes they're prey to kind of, because the staff don't have the knowledge or the capacity, they can be prey to people that take advantage of them, you know. I think it's great that SELCE are engaged in eco and other programs, but I've seen them badly procured by local authorities and badly delivered. And too often they look to us to kind of, you know, fill the gaps in their capacity. So I do think going forward, the Labour government have got a lot of commitments around it. They are committed to building a municipal community collaborative energy sector. We'll see what that looks like on the ground. We'll see how quickly they can make good 14 years of underfunding. It's things just aren't going to change overnight. So I think local authorities are great to cooperate with. There is some great work happening in local authorities, but it can be quite challenging at the same time. So yeah, I'm sure the other organisations have good experience as well.
Do you want to come back in on that, Geordie?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we have been incredibly lucky, I think, in that. I mean, I think most of our councils have declared climate emergencies, you know, down to the town council level. I say most, I mean, certainly our local town council has, certainly the city has, Westocks has, and you know, they've put people in place to drive that. And although I was very upset at the time, one of our best retrofit coordinators actually left us to join the county council to set up their, you know, their retrofit team. So they actually have got teams, and actually that's joking, because it is actually, it means we've got that collaboration sort of built in. So how can you replicate that? I mean, I guess the first question is, has your local council declared a climate emergency? Are they taking it seriously? Who are the right people to speak to? There may be things going on that you're not aware of. As Jonathan said, you know, all councils have been absolutely stripped bare of you know, any cash. And what we've been doing locally is working in working collaboratively on funds and you know, for example, from Innovate UK, working with the councils, but also large housing groups, Oxford Brookes University, Arup Group, you know, various organisations, all with a sort of, all bringing in something to the table. Ourselves at Retrofit Works, bringing together that experience and together forming a sort of a strong team for these funding streams. On the funding, I think somebody alluded to it before. There's nothing worse than a short term or short, you know, poorly thought out sort of funding, such as the last debacle we had, the green, whatever it was called. I mean, a lot of contractors went under because it was so badly executed. So we absolutely need a long-term vision, so that contractors can invest ahead. You know, once bitten, twice shy. I think a lot of contractors will be very cautious about getting involved in future schemes, you know, because a lot of them got burnt on the last one. So yeah, I mean, I guess it is just identifying those right people in your local organizations, just, you know, having those conversations. I mean, as I say, we've got a lot of, fortunately, a lot of people that are all on the same page, and the only thing that's holding it back is finance.
But before passing on to Zana, there's another question that's come up, which is similar, but there's slightly different emphasis. It's how do we build a case for mass retrofitting plus training its workforce?
So there is a national retrofit strategy that was sort of co-written by Russell Smith. It's been already presented to both main parties, and so that was written a couple of years ago. So it does look out. It looks beyond what it will take in terms of, you know, when we think of retrofit, the you know, for the physical task and the cost of it, but it importantly, it looks at all the opportunities for you know, growth and upskilling. It looks at the shortfalls, but it also sees them as opportunities. But it also looks at things that are often overlooked about the health benefits to providing a very, you know, basic human right to live in a house that is, you know, dry, without mold, warm, and the savings to the NHS. So there's, you know, but it does need long-term planning. So I'd look up the National Retrofit Strategy, and also the National Retrofit Hub is also a great resource trying to bring all these things together.
I'd just say on that one, B4Box, the contractor we're working with in Manchester, is a fantastic, and they've award-winning, they won the Ashton Awards last year, example of a trainer contractor. So a contractor that is actually a training base at the same time as well, and delivering like training quals under, like, you know, PADS 2035 and other standards. And I think they're they're almost unique in the UK for that. Too many organizations through procurement, too many companies will make nods to kind of like bring on apprentices and what have you, but they don't actually do the training as part of the work. And too often that kind of training element is value engineered out of the contract. So real advocates for organizations like B4Box, and we do need more of those around the UK.
I think the Trustmark process in PAS 2035 is providing a framework. I mean, it seems as if it's like really taking quite a long time to build up. But for example, working with traditional buildings, you are now supposed to use vapor open materials to comply with PAS, which means that contractors are having to start looking at natural materials and vapor open materials. And at the moment, it's not fundable through eco funding because that's really minimal. But for able to pay in the homeowner market, we are seeing a shift in the understanding of the complexity of retrofit, and the regulation of it through PAS is ultimately going to help, except the training has to be there. And what we're also finding is all of those roles, the retrofit assessor, retrofit coordinator, and the contractors they're hard to come by. So people are not really moving across enough from the rest of the construction industry. So that's where a lot of the skilled people will be found because they've already worked in the construction industry for a long time, rather than just apprenticeships or getting school leavers and trying to train them up into an industry that they don't know. It's such, I mean, as everyone's been talking about, retrofit is so complex. If you don't have professionals who've worked in existing buildings, you know, for a lot of years as part of the mix, you know, there's a lot of pitfalls. So, you know, I think this thing about training people who are already in the industry is going to really, really help. And I don't think I had much to add on the local authorities, except that they're really good on communicating. We've found that the local authority is very helpful. So, for example, they'll help us to do a mail out to a certain demographic or certain area of households. They can advocate for the project. So working with local authorities, even if they haven't got funding, is you know, really, really positive, and you know, it keeps those communications between community-based groups and local authorities, which is really good to strengthen. Even if we might have slightly different ways of doing things, but working together is brilliant. Yeah. So I think that's my main.
Oh, sorry. I was just to come in on the sustainable material side of things. I mean, I think because most of the properties we work on are sort of so-called hard to treat. They are solid walls, and pretty much we almost exclusively work with you know, wood fibre and lime and such materials. And it's been really encouraging. So a lot of what I do personally is sort of providing sort of, so that's introducing new contractors to that concept of working, signposting, introducing them to manufacturers, you know, so such as Unity Lime and who are our local sort of PowerTech supplier and Baumit supplier, and really working on those technical details together. We had this contractor had been doing so-called, I don't know what you call it, modern construction, shall we say, not using sustainable materials, and normally, like a plaster that's used to gypsum, it's a real learning curve trying to learn lime. And this one guy, it looked like, the first time I saw his job, it looked like he'd been doing it for 10 years. It was absolutely amazing, and it was so encouraging to see. And this contractor now, over the last couple of years, has exponentially grown his business doing this type of work. So he's identified that there's a niche here. He's sending his team and doing CPDs and getting his team really trained up, because he's seen there's a niche, he's seen there's not enough people, and he can see he can really grow his business. So it does make business sense, and there's so much pride in their team and what they do. I mean, it is really amazing. It's so encouraging to see. It's not the norm, but it is. I think we do need to, just let contractors know that it's got to be financially viable for them, and this absolutely demonstrates that it is, or it can be.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we want any questions from?
You've muted yourself in the room. Although I know we're out of time anyway, so sorry.
Thanks. Any questions from any of the people here? No?
I have a question about the materials. Hello, my name is Maciej Machojewski. I have construction company in London, Stark General Construction, and I have a question about the materials, about that one-stop shops. That materials you have got from manufacturers, like with a lot of cheapest than from local shops. That in that way you cutting the costs of that materials.
I think in our case, so the type of materials we use are not generally available in a normal builder's merchant. Increasingly more common, but there tends to be sort of regional suppliers. So in whatever region you're in, there'll be a supplier of, you know, lime or wood fiber or cork or hemp or whatever the materials are, or the specialist tapes and membranes, things like that. So but I mean, it's available nationally online, you know, delivered. But there's I mean, there's, if I'm trying to think, if you're London, did you say?
Yes, because I know the issue that the people can't afford using sustainable materials, because the price they are high. That's why I asking from where is that materials, because usually someone is between, and then someone earning that profit, like a sellers, resellers. And it's good to create materials from manufacturers. And I have done a huge research since 6 months, and I'm a nationality from Poland, and we have there a lot of sustainable products, because we have in winter -30 and in summer +30. So there is a lot of manufacturers that the products they are very good quality, and the prices they are 300% cheaper.
I'll talk to you afterwards.
Yes, so
maybe we can do a bulk order and rent a warehouse.
so because in Ireland they have done one-stop shop, and we can do the same when we will collaborate each other.
Yeah, I think there's lots of ideas of things we can do. needs to happen about, accessing, has it gone on?
No, it's on
No,
there. Yeah.
Okay, that of accessing materials, but also I think about training and sharing best practice in with builders. I think the way that you've brought builders on would be really good. Maybe it's a topic for a future webinar, is how to address some of these issues that have come up.
I've got one question. How coverage of these amazing organic endeavours that have started from the ground up? You know,
Hub is thinking about this issue.
Right, yeah.
In fact, what was going to put a link onto the way the National Retrofit Hub came out of the report that Geordie referred to, and they're basically doing information collecting about different aspects of retrofit, but they've got one that's called driving uptake, and that's essentially they're thinking about at least initiating a network of community retrofit initiatives.
if you don't end up with 3 in Islington and nothing in Canada.
Yeah. So, well, I think if you're interested in, I mean, we can report back through ACAN how that is
Has the
developing.
link gone in the chat? We've got a link.
Yeah, the link's now in the chat.
But you've put it in
Oh,
the chat.
no,
If you
it's not
stick it
in the chat. I don't know if I
Sorry,
can stick it in the chat. I can't copy it off that on the screen. I think people have to photograph it. So I think, there's an idea about trying to coordinate these things and also to share best practice, because I think we really need it to grow and to get better coverage.
I think that the link that is on screen is a link to, you can sign up to join the working group, which is called delivery group, who are going to look at how to support emerging and existing community energy groups. So that I think they're open to people coming in with ideas, but it's in early development. So that link, if we can, we'll put it in the chat before. I don't know, can we copy it?
I can't copy it off the screen, no.
You can't copy it. No, all right.
Basically, if you go on the National Retrofit Hub, I think you can follow some links and you'll find it.
It's the WG-register at the end. Yeah. Okay.
I have another question.
Okay.
We've got time. I was just wondering about whole life carbon and upfront carbon assessments in this context, whether groups are offering that or whether that's sort of prohibitive in terms of time and cost to do. Background for this, if you sit in any of the ACAN WhatsApps, probably once every 2 to 3 months, someone will ask about, say, carbon payback periods on triple glazing or secondary glazing, for example, and how those things kind of compare. So yeah, just interested to know if that's something people are looking at, or if it's kind of not situation.
We're incorporating it into our home retrofit planner, but as you kind of hint at, there's a lot of kind of trade-offs and complexities there. I'm afraid I have to go now. Sorry, I'm at time. So it's been a really nice session, but thank you very much. And I'm going to head off now. But yeah, I'm sure you'll carry on. So see you later.
All right. Thanks very much, Jonathan. Thank you. Yeah.
From my side, just to say I mean, it's part of the reason that we use, there's multiple benefits of sustainable materials. I don't like the word sustainable because it's a bit of a broad brush, but in terms of embodied energy, in terms of breathability, in terms of indoor air quality, there's so many pluses to using them. We are not calculating the embodied energy in the materials we're using. It's beyond our means at the moment, and all these things, particularly the post-occupancy evaluation, things like this, is things we'd love to do, but on the able to pay market, they're just particularly, householders aren't particularly asking for it, and there isn't any sort of funding for it. So it's not something we are currently doing, but we're conscious of what we specify in terms of materials, and I'll very quickly add on the external wall insulation, probably 99% of external wall insulation in the UK is done with expanded polystyrene. We used to offer it as a third choice to clients because it was considerably cheaper. I recently had to condemn I suppose it was condemn a badly installed external wall insulation project, and it wasn't correctly adhered, causing wind wash behind, and I made the contractor strip it all off. That led to 35 cubic meters of EPS. I contacted multiple companies to see if they, plastic recycling companies, that's all they do. And none of them would take it because it was dirty, because it had render on it. So that all went to the incinerator. So since then, we don't even give that as an option. So we use either rock wool or wood fiber on external wall insulation. So I think we're not interested in a sort of race to the bottom, being the cheapest or whatever. So we're sort of trying to raise the standards and across the board. So yeah, there's multiple reasons for doing that, but we can't actually monitor. We don't have the capacity to measure the embodied energy in the materials that we're using.
Okay.
Okay. Well, so shall we bring things to a close? Thank you very much for everybody who's attended and to all our contributors. I think it's been a very good, very enlightening discussion, and hopefully it's just the beginning of those further discussions. Do you want to add anything, Susie? No, I think we said everything. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.